how they're treated before they get to them as a meal, would they reject this? Would they be rageful and angry? Would they be disgusted? Or would they feel some compassion and begin to say, my goodness, I better extend my conscience about the choice I'm making? That's a lot to focus on, but whatever you feel comfortable talking about, would you please?
All right, let's put our finger on this vegetarian business. I'd like to get back to that in a minute, but I think your perception is right that this effort of better farming and better food is being led by young people. That's not really too surprising. I'm old enough now to understand how important it is to have a routine and not be disturbed from it. But the change that we're talking about is going to require energy, and it's going to require a certain amount of passion, and you look to the young people for that. But also the young people are parents. Most people who have young children are comparatively young themselves, and I think a lot of the movement toward better food is happening because of the concern that young parents have for what they're feeding their young children. The movement toward better food, toward local food, is, as I said before, coming from the bottom up. But we have coming from the top down, if not leadership, at least changing circumstances. There was an article in Time magazine, for instance, on August 31st of this year, that said flat out that we're going to have to change from industrial agriculture. And the reason is that we're using up the resources that are feeding us. So that's coming down from the top, and I think it will speed change. Now, the issue of vegetarianism is a fairly complex one, and I don't think that you can argue against taste or preference in food. If somebody doesn't want to eat an animal, that's fine. I kind of began to be troubled by vegetarianism when it becomes political. The first thing you have to concede is the inhumanity of our present meat economy. It's awful for the animals to be raised in these prisons, and it's awful for the people who have to work in them, and it's awful for the neighbors who live around them. They're really no good in any respect except a false idea of economic efficiency. In an energy economy that's growing more expensive, it begins to look sort of foolish to be bringing food to these animals in confined situations when the animals have legs and could go get it for themselves if they were in, say, a pasture. So that's one part of the argument. The present meat economy is based on an inhumane, energy expensive, unsustainable system. Nobody who cares about animals could be for it. On the other hand, we don't have any examples that I know of a food economy or a way of farming that remains healthy without animals. You've got to have animal manure, and in most places you need to maintain the health of the land. You need a rotation through pasture and or forage crops. In other words, you can't preserve the land while plowing it and spraying it every year. So a country, a region such as the one I live in, which is rolling, highly erodible topography, only probably 5 to 10% of that can be safely plowed each year, and it would have to be carefully done at that. We need grass, which means that we need grazing animals. So to put together the picture of a sustainable agriculture, we've got to arrive at what the English agriculturist Sir Albert Howard would have called a proper balance of plants and animals.
I appreciate your insights. They're both sensitive to the issue, and they're certainly expanding in our consciousness.
I would add to that what I've just said, that a local food economy reduces the distance that the animals have to be transported for slaughter. And in other words, it reduces the energy budget.
See, I think it's very healthy to have some animals on property for grazing. I have some zebu cows. They're tiny little cows. They can walk under your legs, miniature horses. And they can keep the grass grown down. I've had a 200-acre organic farm and was able to cultivate the soil, cultivate the crops without sprays, without a loss, interplanting, and at least 10 different types of bed planting without ever slaughtering an animal. In fact, I've never had to slaughter an animal. So for those of us who have seen how we can raise crops without sacrificing an animal, I think it's very healthy. In fact, I had chickens, especially in my ranch in Texas, because there are fire ants down there. I don't know if you have fire ants in Kentucky, but
No.
boy, fire ant, they're nasty little critters, and they're everywhere. And we got chickens because the chickens would eat these fire ants all day long. They would drop their manure in that hot sun, biodegrades down very quickly and nourishes the soil. So you're absolutely correct. The manure from the animal, and them being a natural insect eater, but they didn't eat the vegetables, which was great. So I just let 500 chickens roam, and then they gave off eggs. Now, I don't eat eggs, but I gave the eggs to neighbors, and they had organic fertilized eggs, which they were very appreciative of dozens and dozens every day. So I believe that there is also a balance. The difference might be between us that I don't believe we have to ever sacrifice an animal in order to maintain the balance, though I absolutely appreciate your thoughts that having animals in balance.
We'd have to do some very careful accounting. Where is your fertility coming from? What do you do with those spent layers? How do you maintain the population of chickens and so on? And I wanted to ask you, your chickens didn't eat your ripe tomatoes?
No, they didn't. They didn't. And I'm a big believer in composting. I have a compost pile that's probably 10, 15 tons. And of always biodegrading down things. And there's a local, I go to a local organic dairy place and I get some manure, but outside of that I don't use the manures. I use microorganisms, and there's a whole new science of microorganisms that will biodegrade down and give you a very healthy, natural probiotic effect upon the material that's breaking down. I also use sea vegetables, seaweed out of the ocean. A lot of different creative ways you can do it.
I understand all that. What would you do if you had rolling topography?
Well, I've had rolling topography. My first organic farm was the Stone Ridge, the fertilizer farm in Stone Ridge, and when it said Stone Ridge, it was literal. And what I did was I put down the type of vining plants that cover the topography that give you beans. And I had at least 20 different types of beans that would be growing off rocks, off cliffs, off ledges. I mean, I grew up in West Virginia, and are